that sugar sweet. You got what I need. Sipping on the potion, all that good emotion, just my kind of heat. Keep it on repeat, tested by the motion, loving this devotion. Live it up, live it up, live it up, sweet emotion. Every time, every night, you and I on a roll. Switch it up, switch it up, switch it up where I'm going. Stay on the fly just in time, know the right way to go. I'm on the road, it's my time, taking control of my life. I want to run the red lights, I've got to run this show. You always take me so high, you always make the highlights. I love the way we vibe, you're like a centerfold. Ooh, that sugar
your everyday life is impacted by how you vote. And when you don't go out and vote, you cannot, impact the changes that you need to. I mean, our society is changing every day, and every vote counts. And we know it from previous presidential election that every single vote counts, even at the local level.
It's pivotal to uplifting our voices and uplifting our needs. On the local level, right, there are things on the ballot that decide whether your local park gets funding, up into decisions that are made about immigration, to picking elected officials who decide the future of immigration and the future of our communities, and what programs are funded and what programs aren't. I think that's one of the things that drew me to civic engagement and voting rights, is specifically that it touches every part of our life.
Particularly during this time, in the last 6 years, I feel like really has been more vital than I ever understood. And for me, as someone who never had a problem voting, never had a problem registering to vote because English is my first language, and I have an American name, an English name, I never understood the problems that people have across the country, minorities in particular, of even registering to vote, let alone getting to the polls.
This does affect me. This does affect everyone I know. I have to come out. I have to be more active to help stop this happening now and in the future.
In my position, I have an opportunity to help people think about, well, yes, there are things that they can do individually, but what about their schools? What about their businesses? And so that we're not relying on just what the individual can do, but what about the systems around them?
I saw this really huge rise in a lot of people looking like me, looking like them, wanting to be part of a change, wanting to run for office, and wanting to speak up for our communities. And I think just seeing all of the people, not only on more state level offices, but even local offices, like school boards and city councils and things like that, seeing the number of Asian American names, Pacific Islander names, and also people of color just running for office and winning their races, and being able to showcase what true diversity looks like. I think that was really inspiring. Yeah.
Being on the Hill, I see the impact of being involved in the political process, and that includes voting. And I think we've seen in the past with Georgia, in the Senate race, in Virginia, New Jersey, and in the past gubernatorial races, an increase in Asian American voter participation. And I think that this increase in what has historically been low rates of Asian American involvement really is an improvement for our community to articulate, what is really the problems for our community, but also what are the solutions and policy proposals that we can advance to speak on behalf of us.
Welcome to our 2021 Taste of Democracy. We have a great program for you that features personal reflections from some of our supporters and partners celebrating our accomplishments and all that has occurred this past year. We are also honored to present our Beacon of Democracy Award to Congresswoman Meng, a tireless champion for our API communities who spearheaded the landmark COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act that brought on new focus, attention, and resources to combat the historic undercounting of hate crimes against the Asian American community. Thank you, Congresswoman Meng. Your leadership inspires us. I don't know about you, but 2021 felt like one long year. Between working from home for the past 2 years and the afterglow of historic voter turnout by our Asian and Pacific Islander American communities in 2020, I feel this year's celebration capstones 24 months of reflections and achievements. The high water mark our electorate made in 2020 and again in local and state races in 2021 were dividends on the years of investments we made in community outreach, educating and mobilizing the electorate, and supporting our partner networks. Together, we trained thousands of volunteers and local leaders, contacted hundreds of thousands of API households with translated mail pieces, text, and phone banking, and manned hundreds of hours on our 888 API Vote hotline to ensure that all eligible voters understood their rights, access, and process to vote. The 2021 year was also a milestone because of the national redistricting process triggered by the U.S. Census. Through our Norman Y. Mineta Leadership Institute, we trained community members about the importance of participating in this year's redistricting process that empowered APIs to have their say in how they should be represented in states like Texas, Arizona, North Carolina, and New Jersey. While the debates and jockeying around the new congressional maps continue, we are pushing forward. In 2022, we are focused on securing a habit of voting within our communities. We need to ensure that our growing communities have access to the information they need to vote safely and securely. This includes making sure that the jurisdictions where APIs have grown significantly provide the language access required of them by Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act. Now you have a role to play. Your financial support ensures that we can conduct the Asian American Voter Survey so that the media and political parties have the information they need to engage our communities. We need your support to continue our efforts to combat mis and disinformation around our election process. And you can help us by securing the resources we need to invest in our future, to recruit first-time and young voters through our ambassador program. I'll end with a personal reflection on why we do this work. The recent recurrence of anti-Asian hate reinforces my commitment to the belief that the only way we can truly address the underlying prejudices that drive the cycle of violence and othering against our communities is by making sure our voices are heard. I am grateful to my team, board, and partner network who share my drive and vision, and I invite you to be a part of our efforts to create lasting change, to have our voices heard, and to better the lives of those in our communities. Now let's get started with a message from our long-standing sponsors.
Good evening. My name is Jason Chan, and I am honored to be here at APIA Vote's Taste of Democracy on behalf of AT&T. AT&T and APIA Vote have a long-standing partnership, and that is because of APIA Vote's continuous advocacy on behalf of the Asian American Pacific Islander community, ensuring that all AAPIs are able to vote. The list of APIA Vote's duties and tasks are almost endless. They conduct voter registration drives, educate organizations on how to engage voters, and provide voting resources in language, along with a plethora of other items that are vital to our community's ability to civically engage. APIA Vote has provided a tremendous service to the AAPI community over the years, and especially in light of the challenges the community has faced this past year, AT&T has broadened our support as well. This year, AT&T and Warner Media committed $7 million to combat and confront anti-Asian hate. This includes a multi-platform PSA campaign to inform, educate, and inspire others to stand in solidarity and stop Asian hate. Further, AT&T expanded its support of AAPI organizations across the country, including Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAJC, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, and the Center for Asian American Media. I would also like to congratulate Congresswoman Meng on receiving this year's Beacon of Democracy Award. Her work on the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act was monumental, and I'm so grateful to have such a tireless advocate representing our community. Thank you to APIA Vote for the opportunity to speak this evening, and I look forward to our continued partnership in the years to come. Enjoy the rest of the program.
Hi, my name is Jun Kim, Associate Vice President of External Affairs at Comcast. I am excited to be a part of APIA Vote's 2021 Taste of Democracy. I'm proud that Comcast has been a long-standing partner of APIA Vote and the important work they do in mobilizing Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders on civic engagement, as well as investing in local partners so that they have the training, support, and financial resources to improve the lives of those in our communities. Comcast is proud to support APIA Vote and their diverse programs, such as the Norman Y. Mineta Leadership Institute training program, which expands the leadership and organizing capacity of local communities, the annual intern reception featuring members of the Congressional APA Caucus, and providing in-kind airtime for PSAs that educate and engage AAPIs about the importance of voting and making our voices heard. Comcast would like to congratulate Congresswoman Meng for receiving this year's Beacon of Democracy Award. The Congresswoman has worked tirelessly to improve the lives of those in our community and represent our voice in Congress. With that, thank you to APIA Vote, their partner organizations, and their allies for the important work that you all do to drive positive change for our communities. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show, and happy holidays.
In the past year, our ability to take on these major priorities has increased as AAPI political power has increased. We've seen so many historic AAPI firsts, such as the election of Michelle Wu as the first AAPI and woman to be mayor of Boston, the appointment of Catherine Tai as the first AAPI United States Trade Representative, which is a cabinet-level appointment, and of course the historic election of Kamala Harris as the first AAPI Black and woman Vice President of the United States. These historic gains in representation have been fueled by the incredible surge in AAPI voters we've seen in the past year. Voter turnout among Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders skyrocketed more than any other racial demographic group for the 2020 presidential election, increasing by over 45%. In just the state of Georgia, there was a 91% increase in AAPI voter turnout over 2016. This increase in participation by AAPI voters has been the margin of victory in historic wins such as the election of John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock to the Senate at the start of this year, an election that gave Democrats control of the Senate.
The work of APIA Vote and of all of you activists and organizers out there who are ensuring that our communities are turning out the vote, making sure their voices are heard in our democracy. Until we have that sense of collective belonging and power in these spaces that are making decisions about our communities, of policies that directly impact us, I think it'll be impossible for us to truly stop Asian hate. Right? We need to make sure that we're a part of these conversations and that people are seeing themselves reflected in leadership as well. Not only so that the communities around us and our allies understand ourselves better, but so that we have a better understanding of ourselves, right? So that we begin to break down some of the internalized racism that a lot of us probably hold with us of what it means to look like or to be a leader, right? That we can see ourselves in those roles as well.
Hi, my name is Lang Huang and I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Since the pandemic, my kids and I have experienced some Asian hate crimes. One particular example was when I took my kids to Laguna Beach in California, and as we walked by a store, a homeless lady kind of got up and ran into the pharmacy, and then she came out with a bottle and she started spraying the sidewalk where I walked by, and she called me a Chinese virus. My kids were shocked, and so was I, and we didn't know how to react. And my little 4-year-old asked me why that lady said that, because I'm not Chinese. So I had to explain to my kids that since then, this is how our Asian people had to deal with. And my experience pretty much motivated me to do more outreach to the Arizona AAPI community to get out the vote in 2020. I went door to door canvassing for the candidates here with my 4-year-old, and he helped me passing out brochures and pamphlets, and I also did poll monitor at the polling places to make sure nothing funny is happening, and I just want to make sure our Asian community have a voice and be able to select a leader who can speak for us and do some good to our Asian community here in Arizona. I'm happy to help support the Arizona ANHPI voter turnout increased by 46% and will continue to do so. Thank you.
When talking about collective action when AAPI or APIs and other allies had came together, which made me feel safe or more empowered this past year. I think GOTV this year had sent a powerful message. And we had two very important elections going on in St. Paul and Minneapolis. Not only were the mayoral seats up for election, but also the ballot referendums that everyone is attentive to hear the results. And we hadn't organized an in-person event in over a year, and we were able to get a good turnout of volunteers to go knock on people's doors and make phone calls to get people out to vote. And additionally, the feedback from voters about how thankful they were for reminders and the interactions that volunteers had with the voters were all positive. And so, by organizing efforts and increasing voter participation, this helps put our agendas on the table rather than being swept under the rug. We want to have leaders that listen and actually advocate to stop Asian hate and other issues. And that's why this work is so important. Thank you for listening.
So, as a child, my passion to serve my community sparked very, very young. And that's because I grew up listening to the personal experiences and war stories of my parents. And those war stories that they had told me shaped me into the woman that I am today, because it taught me how to empathize at such a young age. Ever since then, as I continued growing up, I had made it a mission of mine to be the voice for immigrants and refugees. And so I want to ensure that they are spoken for. I also want to ensure that they aren't outcasted and that they are comfortable and confident with calling this country their home. And so with all of this passion and inspiration, I actually have my parents to thank for. Because of their personal experiences, it has actually brought me to where I am here today, so that I'm able to better represent immigrants and refugees through CAPI USA.
So this year we had a few events that we worked with other AAPI organizations in Minnesota called AMAJ, A-M-A-J. We held several events where the community came together, where we were talking about issues that, all these Asian hate crime issues that came up. And we wanted to, talk amongst ourselves about what next steps could be and what could we do moving forward to make our community feel safer. Those events allowed me to express myself and find that other people were having the same experience that I was. So that was a very empowering moment for me.
Because CMAC is deeply committed to providing the most basic needs and food security for our communities, we have been on the streets and in the neighborhoods every day for the past 20 months of the pandemic. And as such, we have witnessed dozens and dozens of acts of anti-Asian violence, hate, mostly in the form of racial epithets and threats of physical violence. The violence and racism that we face on the street is a direct result of policies and legislation created to divide us and scapegoat each other, so that those who are in power, who are actually directly responsible, are never held accountable. And because of that, CMAC is deeply, deeply grateful to Congresswoman Meng for her tireless work on the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act.
When I think about examples of Asian hate in my life, I really think about 9/11 and the day, specifically 9/12, when I went to school. All I wanted to do was grieve with my friends. But instead, when I walked in, I was looked at by everyone with a different set of eyes. A set of eyes that said, "You did this to us, and why did you do this?" And that kind of feeling that I was an enemy persisted in my life until I was well into college. And I really think that's what inspired me to work with my community, is that when I was younger, I didn't find anyone who looked like me, who sounded like me, who held my experiences, who said, "You're okay. You are a good person. You are valuable. You belong here." And I wanted to be that person for other younger AAPIs as I grew up. And I think with the last year, in April, myself and a group of other AAPI organizers here in Austin, we put together one of the largest Stop Asian Hate rallies and vigils in the U.S. Almost 1,000 people came together And we had people of every faith attend. We had people from all across, from different ethnicities, backgrounds, immigration statuses, and we all came together to tell young Asian people today that you are loved, you belong, you are good. And it just felt so empowering to be able to finally be that person for a new generation of young AAPIs who are experiencing, seeing this traumatic wave of anti-Asian hate, violence, and sentiment that's been happening ever since the pandemic started. And I think this is really why I focus on organizing AAPIs to get out and vote. Because I've met the organizers who are doing amazing work, whether it comes to census outreach or voter registration, or getting people vaccinated, but we still don't see ourselves in positions of power. And I think that's a really important piece of feeling like we belong. When you see your city councilor or your state rep or your governor who looks like you, who says, I've been through what you've been through and I'm here to make sure that doesn't happen again. And that's really why I think increasing voter participation is so important, because when people who look like us, who've experienced what we've experienced, are in seats of power, they'll make sure it doesn't happen again. And from a personal perspective, as we talked to Congresswoman Grace Meng, just thank you for spearheading efforts to pass the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, because it gives people faith. It gives AAPIs faith that our government is working for us. That when we say that we have issues or that we have needs, that the government will respond to our needs to help protect us, make us feel safer, and make us feel, as I've said so many times, like we belong here, because we do. So again, thank you so much for what you're doing, and let's keep it up.
Grace Meng has been a tireless champion for AAPI rights, especially over this past year, and I've been so proud to work alongside her in her role as the first vice chair of CAPAC. Grace was especially vocal in calling out the xenophobia and bigotry that led to rising anti-Asian hate crimes. After the horrific shootings in Georgia, Grace was one of the members who joined me on a congressional delegation there to visit the spas and meet with victims' families. And she has been a leader in helping us to fight back against hate crimes as a lead sponsor of the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, which will help improve hate crimes reporting, tracking, and prosecution. But even more impressive is that at a time of historic partisanship and gridlock, Grace was able to not only get this bill passed by the House, it passed the Senate and was signed into law by President Biden, sending an important signal that AAPIs are not alone. She's also led efforts to increase language access for AAPIs, lay the groundwork for the creation of an AAPI Smithsonian Museum, and encourage the creation of school curriculums that include AAPI history. That is why I am incredibly honored to be here as Grace Meng is presented with the Beacon of Democracy Award. Grace is a truly remarkable AAPI leader, and our whole community has benefited from her efforts.
As reports of coronavirus have spread across the U.S., so have incidents of anti-Asian violence.
One-year-old man seen on surveillance video being pushed.
Reported nearly 4,000 crimes against Asian Americans since the start of the pandemic.
Assaulted Jen Shea and 83-year-old Nok Pham.
Throwing an object at an Asian woman, then pushing her.
Hurtful and misleading language from our nation's leaders are now making things worse.
Chinese virus. Kung flu. Comes from China.
I want him to call the virus by its proper name and not use racist tactics.
Last year, she passed a House resolution condemning anti-Asian hate speech.
I started to get voicemails.
I'm calling about the Karate Kid virus.
Hey, you look like a Chinese virus.
Go back to whatever Asian country you belong.
Hey,
Why doesn't she go back to where she came from?
Some lady got hurt, I think, and
So we need to make sure if we have any Asian spies, we need to be checking on them.
8 people were killed in a shooting rampage. 6 of the victims are Asian American women.
Passionate pleas to stop the hate, stretching from New York to Chicago and Atlanta, where
for this week's shooting spree killed 8.
Someone who has been fighting hate from the start of this pandemic, New York Congresswoman Grace Meng.
Congresswoman Grace Meng fired back.
This hearing was to address the hurt and pain of our community, to find solutions, and we will not let you take our voice away from us.
Congresswoman Meng has introduced new legislation, too, that would help protect the Asian American community. The Congresswoman is now pushing to pass the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act. She told me that she does not remember a time when so many people who don't look like her are standing in solidarity.
Good evening. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng from New York, and I'm deeply honored to receive APIA Vote's Beacon of Democracy Award at this year's Taste of Democracy program. Thank you so much for choosing me to receive this phenomenal recognition. I am deeply touched, grateful, and humbled to be presented with this wonderful and prestigious honor. It really means a lot to me, and I truly appreciate being selected. But this award isn't about me. It's about ensuring a future that is free of bigotry and discrimination, especially for our AAPI community. For nearly 2 years, the AAPI community has been fighting two viruses, the COVID-19 pandemic and anti-Asian hate. We have been blamed and scapegoated for the COVID-19 crisis, and as a result, those of Asian descent have been beaten, slashed, spat on, and even killed. To help combat this problem, I introduced my COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act with Senator Mazie Hirono. And with overwhelming and bipartisan support, the bill was swiftly passed by Congress, and in May, I joined President Biden at the White House as he signed my bill into law. My measure will go a long way towards helping to combat these ongoing heinous attacks, and the Justice Department is in the process of implementing this new law. But we must also address the biases against AAPIs at its roots, breaking down the stereotypes and negative perceptions that for generations have existed about our communities. That's why I'm also pushing legislation to promote the teaching of AAPI history in our schools to ensure that our future generations learn about our past and how Asian Americans helped America grow and prosper, and even the trauma that we endured in the building of this country. I'm also fighting to create the first national museum dedicated to preserving the history, culture, and accomplishments of AAPIs so that our stories and contributions to this country, our country, are properly documented, preserved, and acknowledged. So often, our community gets homogenized and the breadth of experiences that make up our community is forgotten. Our community is going to make up 10% of all voters in just under 15 years, but we are not a monolith. This places a spotlight on the diversity in our community, which will cause elected officials and others to pay attention to our voices in their communities. This was best showcased in the Georgia runoff election this past January, where Asian Americans became a new political force that helped decide the outcome of the close race. And as the voice of AAPI communities grows stronger, we must stay vigilant to ensure that our voting rights are protected. Recognizing our power, it's no surprise that many states are taking unprecedented action to restrict our access to the ballot box. They are afraid. And you know what? They should be. Asian Americans are voting, and we don't intend to surrender our rights anytime soon. In closing, I really want to again thank you for presenting me with the Distinguished Beacon of Democracy Award. Thank you to APIA Vote for the great work that you all do. It's a privilege to partner with all of you, and I look forward to continuing to do so for many years to come. Thank you to everybody watching. Thank you to all those who support the important work of APIA Vote. I send my best wishes for an enjoyable event. Stay safe until we meet again. Thanks so much.
Congratulations again, Congresswoman Grace Meng. And thank you, Congresswoman Judy Chu, for your support and comments this evening, and to all our supporters who provided testimonials throughout tonight's program. Thank you to our sponsors, Comcast, AT&T, Napaba, and Wild & Associates. And thank you, our audience, for joining us. I hope you found inspiration for the urgency and importance of our work and make a donation before the end of the year. Thank you for joining us this evening.